People are often distracted by the fancier damage-dealing spells and forget about the utility spells that can be incredibly useful for navigation, gathering of information, and avoiding certain death. This will not be an exhaustive list, but these are 10 spells that deserve more attention. Speak with animals. If you're not using Speak with Animals, then you're missing out on a lot of conversations, and who doesn't want to cozy up to the likes of the cuddly Bosk? Also, in addition to just missing out on tons of fun conversations and getting more information out of the game on its lore, you could also be missing out on some quests, as some of them are reliant on conversing with the animals. So this spell is really important from a gameplay perspective and getting the most you can out of Baldur's Gate 3, and keep in mind that this spell can be cast as a ritual outside of combat, and therefore not using up one of your valuable spell slots. Featherfall. Featherfall is an integral part of vertical navigation, which is a big part of Baldur's Gate 3, and sometimes it's safer to take one big leap than to pick your way down the path. If you've been to the Underdark, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're going to find many opportunities to take advantage of this. I would say the majority of them so far in the Underdark, and this is another one that can be cast as a ritual outside of combat. Just make sure that if you are not using turn-based mode, that you get those leaps done before it runs out, or you're going to have a nasty surprise. Speak with the Dead. This one in its uses is similar to Speak with Animals. If you're not using it, you are going to miss out on lots of conversations. You are going to miss out on background lore and information from the game. I'm not aware of any quests that are dependent on its use, but you will be missing out on the best experience that you can get from Baldur's Gate 3. And as with the other two, it can be cast as a ritual outside of combat. Light. Now this one is a cantrip, which means that it's not going to use up any kind of spell slot and can be used over and over again. And as the name pretty much implies, this is the most helpful for characters that lack dark vision, such as humans. The places that you will find it to be the most helpful would be the Underdark and any other naturally dark locations, such as caves. Light can be cast on your own character, which will automatically target your weapon and create a glow around you. It can also be cast on an enemy or an object as well. Friends. This one gives you advantage on charisma checks, and what that means is that you will get to roll 2 d20s instead of 1, and the higher dice roll will win. This is good for certain character interactions, such as trying to save a very snippy goblin from certain death. Guidance. Also a cantrip, and I'd say probably the most useful one on this entire list. This gives you a 1d4 addition to any d20 roll result. So what that means is you get one 4-sided dice roll added to your d20 roll. And it doesn't have to be just charisma checks like friends, it can be any of them. So I recommend using this one as often as possible. Do note though, you cannot use guidance from more than one character at a time. You can only apply guidance once. Faerie Fire. Faerie Fire is useful in being used on enemies. It does 2 things for you. One is that it prevents that enemy from becoming invisible, and the other is that it gives you advantage on your attack rolls against that target. This is good for using against elusive targets, especially those that like to go invisible quite often, and keep this one in mind for Act 2. Command. Command is a great way to control the battlefield in a fight. It requires a wisdom saving throw, so it's easy to hit enemies with lower intelligence scores. It has several different options available when you select it. Halt, drop weapon, flee, and approach. And upcasting this spell grants additional targets so that you can command more than one enemy. Magic Missile. Magic Missile is quite possibly the best damage spell that there is. It always hits, so it has a lot of practical uses. One is getting an enemy off the board to eliminate the damage that they're dealing. So if you have an enemy down to say 2-3 hit points, throw a magic missile their way. Get them off that board, because remember, no matter what their health is at, they are dealing the same amount of damage to you. Another practical use is hitting high defense enemies, since it is not percentage based and it will hit no matter what. The other practical use is when you have an enemy that is using a spell that requires concentration, such as Command that we just talked about. Every magic missile shot has the potential to break that concentration and therefore break the hold of that spell over your party member. Misty Step. Misty Step allows your character to teleport to a space that they can see. This spell adds maneuverability both on the battlefield and off of it. It's good for getting your squishy characters, such as Gale, out of tough situations where enemies are starting to crowd around them. It's also good for getting your ranged characters into a good vantage point. And outside of combat, it is good for maneuvering hard-to-reach areas, or an area that may be environmentally dangerous to you, such as quite a few areas within the Underdark. And there you have it, my list of the top 10 underrated spells for Baldur's Gate 3. What about yours? Do you have any that didn't come up on this list? Put them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.